Welcome, I'm so glad you're tuning in, because today's topic is one that almost everyone can relate to: fear. It's something we all experience, whether it's the fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, or even the fear of taking the first step toward a dream we've had for years. Fear is a natural part of being human, and no one is immune to it. But did you know that fear, while completely normal, can also hold us back from achieving our greatest potential? It can keep us stuck in a cycle of hesitation, self-doubt, and missed opportunities. In this episode, Overcoming Fear and Taking Bold Action, we're going to explore how fear impacts our lives, how it shows up in ways we may not even realize, and, most importantly, how we can break free from its grip to take bold, life-changing actions. Fear can be a powerful force. For some, it may feel like an immovable wall between where we are and where we want to be. It whispers in our ears, telling us that we're not good enough, that we'll fail, that it's safer to stay in our comfort zones. But here's the truth: while fear is completely natural, it doesn't have to control us. We don't have to let it dictate our choices, and we certainly don't have to allow it to hold us back from the life we truly want. In fact, understanding how to manage and overcome fear can help us use it as a tool to propel ourselves forward, instead of allowing it to freeze us in place. You might be wondering, why does fear seem to have such a powerful hold on me? Why do I sometimes feel paralyzed, even when I know I need to act? It's because fear is deeply ingrained in our biology. Our brains are wired to protect us, and fear often signals danger, real or imagined. Thousands of years ago, when our ancestors faced physical threats from predators, fear helped them survive. Today, while most of our fears may not be life or death situations, the brain still reacts in similar ways, triggering the fight or flight response. But the truth is, most of the fears we face in our modern lives, like starting a new project, asking for a promotion, or speaking in public, are not life-threatening. However, the brain doesn't always differentiate between real danger and perceived danger. This is why fear can sometimes feel overwhelming, even in situations that aren't as dangerous as they may seem. But what if we could learn to break free from this automatic response? What if we could reframe fear, so it doesn't stop us, but rather, pushes us to take action? That's what we're going to talk about today. We'll start by understanding the role that fear plays in our lives and how it shapes our decisions. We'll take a closer look at the science behind fear and why it can be so difficult to act in spite of it. And most importantly, we'll explore strategies for overcoming fear and taking bold actions, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us. Think about the times you've experienced fear in your own life. Maybe you've felt that anxiety before an important presentation, or that doubt before embarking on a new venture. Perhaps you've wanted to take a leap of faith but couldn't bring yourself to make that first step. Fear can show up in many forms, but at its core, it's a mechanism that protects us from perceived harm. The problem is, fear often overestimates the risks, preventing us from embracing opportunities that could change our lives. But fear doesn't have to stop us. In fact, what if we could start seeing fear as a sign that we're on the edge of something important? What if, instead of avoiding fear, we used it as a signal to take action, to step into the unknown and push our boundaries? That's the mindset shift we're going to explore today: how we can embrace fear and use it to fuel our growth, rather than allowing it to hold us back. Now, let's talk about why overcoming fear is so crucial. Fear doesn't just hold us back from taking action, it also limits our potential. When we let fear dictate our choices, we tend to stay in our comfort zones, avoiding challenges that could lead to personal growth and success. We miss out on opportunities to improve, to learn, and to achieve things we never thought possible. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, and fear of judgment can all contribute to a mindset of stagnation. But when we learn to manage these fears, we unlock our true potential and create space for bold, confident decisions. In this episode, we'll share practical strategies to overcome fear and step into a life where bold action becomes the norm. Whether it's taking that first step in starting a new project, confronting a difficult conversation, or chasing your dreams, we'll show you how to move through the fear and start taking the actions that will bring you closer to the life you want. So, if you've ever felt stuck by fear, whether it's holding you back from pursuing your goals or stopping you from trying something new, this episode is for you. By the end of it, you'll have a better understanding of fear, why it affects us the way it does, and how you can take actionable steps to break through those barriers. Together, we'll learn how to turn fear into a motivator that helps us take bold actions and live a more fulfilling, empowered life. So, let's dive into today's topic. Ready to break free from fear and start living boldly? Let's get started. Fear is something that we all experience at different points in our lives. It's a natural response to situations where we feel uncertain or unsafe. However, not all fears are based in reality. Many times, we fear things that haven't happened yet or things that are unlikely to ever come to pass. For example, how many of us have felt that knot in our stomach before speaking in public? The thought of all eyes on us, the fear of saying something wrong, or being judged, yet, in most cases, the audience is actually supportive, even understanding. The fear we feel isn't coming from the event itself, but from the worst-case scenarios that play out in our minds. Take Ashley, a friend of mine who had always dreamed of becoming a public speaker. She was a talented writer, but the thought of speaking in front of a crowd terrified her. She would picture herself stumbling over her words, the audience laughing, and her entire career dreams falling apart. But the first time she took the stage, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling like a failure, she felt a rush of adrenaline, followed by relief when she saw the nodding heads in the crowd. The audience wasn't judging her, they were there to listen and learn. Her fear, though intense, was not rooted in reality, it was a projection of what could happen if she failed. The truth, though, was far less scary than her mind had led her to believe. The first step in overcoming fear is understanding it. Fear is not an enemy, it's a signal. It's your body's way of telling you that you are stepping out of your comfort zone and into a new, potentially life-changing experience. In fact, fear often accompanies growth. Every time you face something that challenges you, whether it's a big presentation, a career change, or even a relationship issue, you'll likely experience fear. But here's the thing. The more you face your fears, the less power they have over you. I think of a client I worked with named William, who struggled with anxiety around taking risks in his business. He had an idea for a new product that he believed could change the industry, but fear of failure held him back for months. He constantly worried about what would happen if his idea didn't work, about how much money he could lose, and about what others would think of him. When he finally made the decision to move forward, he did so reluctantly. But he was surprised by the results. Sure, there were some mistakes along the way, but the product launched, and it gained traction. More importantly, William felt a sense of freedom. By confronting his fears head-on, he realized that the risk wasn't as dangerous as he'd imagined. The fear that had kept him stuck for so long had been blown out of proportion in his mind. You see, fear often blows things out of proportion. It tells us that failure is catastrophic, when in reality, failure is simply a part of the process. Every successful person you know has failed in some way. Whether it's an entrepreneur who lost money on their first venture, or a writer who faced rejection after rejection before getting published, failure is not the end, it's often just a stepping stone to success. The truth is, failure isn't as dangerous as fear would have us believe. It's part of the learning process. And here's a key insight: failure doesn't define you. Your ability to rise up after failing, that defines you. But I know, it's still hard. The fear doesn't always go away quickly. It's not as simple as telling yourself, oh, fear is just a signal that I'm growing. In practice, it feels much more real, right? There's that familiar tightening in your chest, that rush of negative thoughts. But understanding that fear is a signal can help you reframe it. Instead of seeing fear as something to avoid, try to see it as something that indicates you're on the verge of something important. It's not a wall that should stop you, but a hurdle that, once cleared, will bring you closer to your goals. Let's take an example from my own life. A few years ago, I decided to start this very podcast. The idea of speaking into a microphone, knowing that people would be listening to my thoughts and ideas, was nerve-wracking. I feared that I wouldn't be able to engage the audience, that I'd sound silly, or worse, that no one would listen. But what I found through this experience was this: the fear didn't go away right away. It didn't vanish the first time I hit record or even after a few episodes. But each time I sat down to record, I grew more comfortable with the process. The fear lessened. I learned that the more I took action despite feeling afraid, the less control fear had over me. I began to embrace the discomfort, knowing that it was part of the journey. Fear plays a massive role in how we make decisions, and understanding its influence can help us navigate it more effectively. For many people, fear is what causes them to make safe, often limiting decisions. It's easy to choose the path of least resistance. After all, staying in our comfort zone feels safe. But that safety can come at a high price. We miss out on opportunities, growth, and new experiences. Think about someone you know who has stayed in the same job for years, not because they enjoy it, but because they're afraid of changing careers. The fear of the unknown, of failure, or of starting over keeps them stuck in a job that drains them. They know deep down that they're capable of more, but fear keeps them from taking the leap. So, how do we use fear to our advantage? First, we must recognize when fear is holding us back and then take steps to move past it. One effective way is by breaking down large goals into smaller, manageable steps. If the idea of launching a new project is overwhelming, break it down into smaller, bite-sized tasks. The fear of failure often comes from the perceived magnitude of the task at hand. By taking things one step at a time, you reduce the intimidation factor. Another approach is to reframe failure. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid at all costs, try to view it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Each failure is a lesson that will bring you closer to success. By shifting your perspective, you'll be less afraid of failure and more motivated to take action, even when the outcome is uncertain. Think about a time when you were afraid to take action. Maybe it was starting a new job, speaking in front of a group, or even trying something new in your personal life. Can you recall the feeling? That mixture of hesitation, uncertainty, and maybe even physical tension. Fear often shows up in ways that are subtle but very real. You might notice the tightness in your chest, your heart racing a little faster, or that anxious pit in your stomach. These are all signs that fear is present, even if you can't immediately identify the source. Sometimes, fear is more psychological. You might hear that little voice in your head telling you, "You're not good enough," or, "What if you fail?" These thoughts can stop you in your tracks before you've even tried. And let's not forget the most dangerous form of fear, self-doubt. When you doubt your own abilities, you're not just afraid of failing, you're afraid of who you are in the process. This can hold you back from even attempting something new because the fear of failure is tied to a deeper fear of not being enough. For example, let's think of Aisha, a talented graphic designer who had the opportunity to present her work to a potential client. She had done all the right preparation, but when it came time to present her ideas, she froze. Why? It wasn't because she didn't know her stuff, she had spent hours refining her designs. It was the fear of being judged, the fear that she wasn't as good as the other designers, and the fear of failing in front of a potential client. These fears didn't have anything to do with her actual skills, they were stories her mind had created. Often, fear disguises itself as a reason to avoid change. It tells you, stay where you are. It's safe here. You don't need to take any risks. This is a common trick our brains play on us. We convince ourselves that staying in the same place, even if it's uncomfortable, is better than stepping into the unknown. It feels easier to stay in the comfort zone, where you know what to expect. But here's the thing, staying in your comfort zone means you'll never grow. You'll never achieve anything new, and you'll never experience the kind of personal growth that comes from taking risks and facing your fears head-on. I remember a time when I had to make a major decision about my career. I was working in a job that didn't challenge me, but I was comfortable. The fear of the unknown, the fear of not finding something better, kept me from making the leap into a new career that I had been dreaming about. Every time I thought about it, my mind would fill with doubts. What if I failed? What if I couldn't handle the pressure? What if I ended up worse off than I was? These fears kept me stuck, holding on to something that no longer served me. But after a while, I realized something important. If I didn't step out of that comfort zone, I would never know what I was truly capable of. So, I took the plunge. Yes, it was scary. Yes, there were moments of doubt along the way. But those fears were nothing compared to the sense of freedom and growth I felt once I broke free from my own limitations. So, how do we recognize fear in our own lives? Often, it's not something that happens once and then goes away. Fear has a way of sneaking into our thoughts, sometimes without us even realizing it. The first step is to become aware of it when it happens. Are you putting off making a decision because you're afraid of what might happen? Are you avoiding a challenging situation because it feels safer not to face it? Fear often manifests in procrastination or avoidance. It tells you that it's easier to stay where you are, even though you know deep down that you want more. Take, for example, Christopher, who had been working on his startup idea for months. He had the business plan, the marketing strategy, everything ready to go, but he kept delaying the launch. Every time he thought about putting it out into the world, his fear would take over. What if no one liked his product? What if it failed? Fear held him back from even taking the first step toward his dream. Recognizing fear in these situations is the first step toward overcoming it. The second step is to take action, no matter how small. It's about pushing through the discomfort and starting, even when your mind is telling you to stop. When you take that first step, you begin to break the cycle of fear and inaction. It may feel awkward at first, but as you continue to push through your fears, you start to build momentum. The key is to take action in spite of the fear, not wait for the fear to disappear before you act. Remember, fear doesn't disappear overnight. It's something that you need to confront head-on. The more you recognize it and understand its influence over your decisions, the less power it will have over you. Over time, you'll develop the tools to break through that initial hesitation and move toward the things that scare you. Fear often tries to convince us that we're not ready or capable of handling the challenges that come with change. But the truth is, we don't need to be ready, we just need to start. No matter how small the action, it's the courage to take that first step that makes all the difference. In the next part, we'll explore how fear is often tied to a fear of failure, and how you can reframe failure to make it a powerful tool for growth and success. The next crucial step in overcoming fear is shifting your mindset. It's not enough to simply recognize fear when it shows up, we need to change how we perceive it. Instead of viewing fear as something to avoid or something that stands in our way, try seeing it as a challenge, something that can actually help you grow. Fear is a natural part of life, but it doesn't have to control us. In fact, when we learn to embrace fear, we can use it as fuel to push us forward rather than let it hold us back. One powerful way to shift your mindset is through positive self-talk. Self-talk is the internal dialogue that runs through your mind, and it has the potential to either lift you up or drag you down. When fear arises, many of us automatically begin thinking negative thoughts. I can't do this, I'm not good enough, or, this is too hard. These thoughts can stop us from even trying, convincing us that we're incapable of handling the situation. But here's the key, fear is just a feeling, not a fact. It doesn't define who you are, and it doesn't determine what you can or can't do. Think about it for a moment. When you're faced with something that scares you, how do you usually react? Do you freeze? Do you second-guess yourself? This is a natural response, but it doesn't have to be your default reaction. Instead, try to reframe your thoughts. For example, when you feel the wave of fear washing over you, replace the thought, I can't do this, with, I might be nervous, but I can handle this. By acknowledging the fear and then choosing a more empowering thought, you're taking control of the situation rather than letting fear take control of you. Let's look at an example. Consider Mark, who had always wanted to speak at a public event but was terrified of doing so. The idea of standing in front of an audience filled him with dread. But Mark knew that if he didn't face his fear, he would never move forward in his career. So, he decided to change his approach. Instead of thinking, I'm going to mess up, he started telling himself, it's normal to feel nervous, but I've prepared, and I'm ready. He focused on the positive aspects of the situation, he had valuable information to share, and this opportunity was a chance for growth. When it came time to speak, Mark still felt nervous, but instead of allowing the fear to paralyze him, he acknowledged it and pushed through. The positive self-talk helped him reframe the situation, and the more he spoke, the less fear he felt. Over time, his fear of public speaking diminished because he had changed his mindset and started seeing fear not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to grow and improve. This is where the magic happens. Mindset can transform your experience of fear. By reframing fear from something to be avoided into something that can be learned from, you begin to gain confidence and control. Instead of letting fear stop you from taking action, you use it as a signal that you're growing, that you're stepping outside your comfort zone, and that you're capable of more than you realize. Now, let's break it down further. Whenever you feel fear rising, pause and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Is it the fear of failure? The fear of judgment? The fear of not being good enough? Once you identify the source of your fear, remind yourself that it's not a reflection of your abilities. It's just a feeling, not a fact. Fear can lie to you, telling you that you're not ready or that you'll fail, but these thoughts don't have to dictate your actions. Another powerful tool for shifting your mindset is visualization. Take a moment to close your eyes and imagine yourself succeeding at whatever it is that scares you. Visualize the moment of success, the feeling of accomplishment, and the joy that comes from having pushed through your fear. Visualization helps create a mental image of success that can be incredibly motivating. When you visualize success, it becomes easier to take action because you've already seen yourself achieve it in your mind. It's also helpful to remind yourself of past experiences where you've overcome fear. Reflect on the times in your life when you were afraid to take a step, but you did it anyway. Think about how you felt after you faced your fear. Those moments of triumph are proof that you can handle whatever comes your way, even when fear shows up. For instance, let's think about Emily, who was terrified of traveling alone. She had always relied on friends or family to go with her on trips, but she knew that if she wanted to explore new places, she needed to face her fear of solo travel. The first time she booked a trip alone, she was filled with anxiety. But as she prepared, she kept telling herself, "I've traveled before with others, so I can do this on my own." She visualized herself enjoying the trip, meeting new people, and experiencing everything the destination had to offer. And when the time came, Emily took that step, and the fear she felt before her trip faded as she embraced the adventure. This shift in mindset is critical because it enables you to take bold action. Instead of letting fear hold you back, you can use it as a stepping stone. Fear is a signal that you're on the verge of growth. By changing your mindset, you can turn fear from an enemy into an ally. It no longer becomes something you try to avoid, it becomes a tool you can use to propel you forward. To wrap it up, when you start seeing fear as a challenge rather than a threat, you open yourself up to new opportunities for growth. The more you practice positive self-talk, visualization, and reframing fear, the more empowered you'll feel. Fear will still show up, but you'll be ready to face it with a mindset that helps you rise above it. It won't control you anymore, you will control it. In the next section, we'll dive into how to take practical steps to confront and act on your fear, no matter how small the steps may seem. Overcoming fear doesn't mean you have to make drastic changes all at once. In fact, one of the most effective ways to conquer fear is by starting small. Often, we think that overcoming fear requires us to leap into the unknown or tackle a massive challenge, but the reality is that bold actions don't always have to be monumental. Taking small, consistent steps can be just as powerful, if not more so. It's about moving forward, even if the steps are tiny, and each one will bring you closer to conquering the fear that once held you back. Let's think about public speaking as an example. For many, the idea of speaking in front of a large group is terrifying. But instead of immediately signing up for a TED Talk or trying to speak at a conference, you can take smaller, more manageable steps. For instance, you could begin by speaking up in a meeting at work or presenting a small project to a few colleagues. Or maybe you could practice by sharing your thoughts in front of a close group of friends. Each time you do this, you'll feel the fear lessen and your confidence grow. With each small step, you'll be preparing yourself for the bigger challenges ahead. Eventually, the thought of speaking in front of a large group won't seem as intimidating, because you've built up the experience and the courage one step at a time. This concept of taking small actions applies to every area of life. Think about a time when you felt paralyzed by fear. Maybe it was reaching out to someone you admire, making an important phone call, or starting something new. It's easy to become overwhelmed by the thought of taking that first big step, but when you break it down into smaller, more manageable actions, it becomes much more achievable. For example, if you've been avoiding a difficult conversation, start by sending a text or an email to open the door. If you've been wanting to learn a new skill but don't know where to start, begin by watching a short tutorial or reading an article on the topic. These small actions may seem insignificant at first, but they are the foundation of overcoming your fear and making meaningful progress. The key here is consistency. Even if the actions feel small or insignificant in the moment, they are leading you toward bigger achievements. Each time you take an action in the face of fear, you're proving to yourself that fear doesn't control you. Instead, you are the one taking control. Fear can no longer hold you back because you are learning to move forward regardless of it. It's not about eliminating fear entirely but about building the resilience and confidence to move through it. Let's take the example of Jenny, who had always dreamed of starting her own business but was paralyzed by fear of failure. She had so many ideas but was terrified of the risks involved. Instead of jumping right into launching her business, she took small steps. First, she researched the industry, then she made a list of potential customers, and next, she started networking with others in her field. With every conversation, every step forward, the fear became more manageable, and Jenny began to feel more confident in her ability to succeed. It didn't happen overnight, but gradually, she was able to take bigger risks and ultimately launch her business with far more confidence than she had ever imagined. Sometimes, the small actions can be things we might overlook as insignificant, but they're actually crucial to breaking the cycle of fear. For instance, if you're afraid of failure, taking a step might be simply acknowledging your fear and writing it down. By putting your fear into words, you're taking it out of your mind and into the physical world, where it becomes less overwhelming. Or maybe you've been avoiding a difficult task because it feels too big. Break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. Instead of thinking about how much you have to do, focus on what you can do right now. One of the biggest mistakes we can make when facing fear is to wait until we feel ready. The truth is, you may never feel completely ready to take on your fears. There will always be that nagging voice in your head telling you that you're not prepared enough, or that things aren't perfect yet. But the reality is that you'll never make progress if you wait for the perfect moment. The key is to take action even when you don't feel entirely ready. Each small step you take, no matter how imperfect, brings you closer to your goals. For example, if you've always wanted to write a book but have been putting it off due to fear of failure, start by setting aside 10 minutes a day to write. Don't worry about making it perfect, just focus on taking that small step. Over time, those 10 minutes add up, and before you know it, you've written pages and pages, and your fear of writing has been replaced with a sense of accomplishment and progress. Every small action you take helps to build momentum. When we take bold actions, even in small doses, we start to create a habit of moving past fear. And that momentum is incredibly powerful. It can snowball, and before you know it, the things that once seemed impossible now feel achievable. Let's talk about Tom, who wanted to ask for a promotion at work but feared rejection. Instead of waiting for the right time, or allowing his fear to prevent him from taking action, Tom decided to take a small, bold step. He made a list of his accomplishments and rehearsed how he would ask for the promotion. He started by having a conversation with his boss about his goals and contributions. That simple action opened the door for further discussions, and eventually, he was able to present his case for the promotion. It wasn't an easy conversation, and it certainly didn't eliminate all of Tom's fears, but by taking that first small step, he was able to break free from the grip of fear and move toward the career advancement he had wanted. Bold actions don't always have to be huge. In fact, they can be incredibly small. But the key is that they move you forward. The more you take action in the face of fear, the smaller the fear becomes, and the more powerful you become. With each step, you grow more confident and capable, and eventually, you'll find that fear no longer has the same grip on you. So, start small. Take one small action today, and let that be the first step toward breaking through your fear and achieving the life you've always dreamed of. It's crucial to understand that making mistakes is not a setback, it's an integral part of the journey toward overcoming fear. In fact, one of the most important lessons we can learn is that mistakes are not only inevitable, but they are also valuable. So often, we allow the fear of making mistakes to stop us from taking action. We hesitate, we second-guess ourselves, and we become paralyzed by the possibility of failure. But here's the truth: nobody gets everything right on the first try. And that's completely okay. Think about the first time you tried something new, whether it was learning a new skill, taking on a challenging project, or stepping into a new role. Most likely, it didn't go as smoothly as you hoped. You might have stumbled, made errors, or even felt embarrassed. But does that mean you should have given up? Absolutely not. In fact, it's through these mistakes that we grow. Every misstep is an opportunity to learn, refine, and improve. Mistakes teach us what doesn't work, and they guide us toward what will work in the future. They are the stepping stones to success. Let's take the example of Amanda, who decided to launch her own blog but was terrified of making mistakes. She spent months overthinking her first post, worrying about spelling errors, the design, and whether people would even like it. When she finally published her first article, she noticed a few typos and small mistakes. At first, Amanda was devastated. But rather than letting the fear of failure consume her, she saw the mistakes as part of the process. She learned how to edit better, improve her writing style, and tweak her website. More importantly, she realized that no one was perfect, and that imperfection was a part of what made her authentic. Every mistake made her a better blogger, and over time, she grew more confident and capable. Now, her blog is thriving, and those initial mistakes feel like a distant memory, because they were the foundation of her success. If we let the fear of failure prevent us from acting, we miss out on valuable lessons that can only be learned through experience. Think about Thomas Edison, the famous inventor who failed thousands of times before perfecting the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison understood something crucial: failure is not an end. It's a step toward success. Every time he failed, he got one step closer to the breakthrough that changed the world. The key is to shift our perspective on mistakes. Instead of seeing them as failures, try to view them as valuable feedback. Every time you try something new and it doesn't go as planned, ask yourself, what did I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? This mindset shift allows you to embrace mistakes as part of the process, rather than something to fear or avoid. It also helps you develop resilience, the ability to bounce back and keep going, even when things don't turn out the way you expected. Resilience is one of the most powerful tools we have when it comes to overcoming fear. The more we face setbacks and continue moving forward, the stronger we become. Resilience helps us keep taking action despite our mistakes and the fear of failure. It enables us to view challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow. Michael, who started a small business with big dreams but encountered many obstacles along the way. His first product launch didn't meet expectations, and he had to deal with financial struggles, negative feedback, and a lack of customers. At times, it seemed like his dream was falling apart. But rather than giving up, Michael chose to learn from each mistake. He asked for feedback, made improvements, and adjusted his strategies. Over time, his business began to gain traction, and the failures became stepping stones toward success. What's more, Michael's resilience made it easier for him to take even bolder actions in the future, as he no longer saw mistakes as something to fear but as an inevitable and valuable part of growth. You see, the fear of failure often holds us back because we think that making mistakes means we're not good enough or that we're not cut out for success. But what if we could change that narrative? What if we saw each mistake as evidence that we are trying, learning, and moving forward? It's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about embracing them and using them as fuel to keep going. When you're working toward a goal and fear starts creeping in, remember that mistakes are a sign of progress, not a reason to stop. Each time you face a fear, make a mistake, and keep moving forward, you are building resilience. Over time, this resilience makes it easier to take bigger risks and face even greater fears. It becomes a cycle. You take action, make mistakes, learn from them, and then take more action. And with each cycle, fear loses its grip on you. Think about the times when you faced fear and kept going despite it. Maybe it was signing up for that class you weren't sure you could pass, or applying for a job you thought you weren't qualified for. At first, fear might have been overwhelming, but as you kept moving forward, you built confidence. You proved to yourself that you could handle mistakes and setbacks. And now, those initial fears seem smaller and less intimidating. To keep moving forward in the face of fear, remember to be kind to yourself. Everyone makes mistakes, and no one is perfect. The key is to not let those mistakes define you. Instead, use them as opportunities to grow and improve. With every mistake, you get one step closer to where you want to be. And as you continue to take bold actions, embrace mistakes, and build resilience, you'll find that fear no longer has the same hold on you. In summary, learning from mistakes is essential to overcoming fear. Mistakes are not failures, they are lessons that help us improve and grow. The more we face our fears, make mistakes, and keep moving forward, the stronger and more resilient we become. So, when you encounter a setback, don't be discouraged. Embrace it, learn from it, and keep moving forward. Your resilience will carry you through, and before you know it, fear will no longer hold you back from taking bold, fearless actions. To wrap things up, overcoming fear is not about eliminating it but learning how to navigate through it. Fear is a natural and universal feeling, but it doesn't have to control us or prevent us from moving forward. The key is to shift our mindset, recognize when fear is holding us back, and take small but bold steps toward what we truly want to achieve. Remember, fear is not the enemy, it's a signal, an opportunity for growth. Each time you face your fear and keep pushing forward, you'll build resilience and confidence. It's the small actions, the courage to step outside your comfort zone, that create lasting change. Over time, the things that once scared you will become less intimidating, and your sense of capability will grow stronger. So, start today. Don't wait for the fear to disappear because it won't. Instead, take one step, no matter how small, toward what you want to accomplish. Whether it's signing up for a new class, making that phone call, or simply speaking up in a meeting, each action will bring you closer to your goals. And remember, mistakes are part of the process. They're not failures, but lessons that will help you grow even further. You have the power to overcome fear, to move past the doubts and limitations you've placed on yourself. Trust in your ability to face challenges and take bold actions. Fear may never fully go away, but you will become stronger, more confident, and more prepared to take on whatever comes your way. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you feel inspired to take that first step and face your fears head on. Keep going, stay resilient, and take those small bold actions. You're capable of achieving more than you think. I'll see you next time.